a fetus when it's first inseminated, with the very little beginning, the zygote version, it doesn't have interests. It doesn't have capacities. It doesn't feel anything about the world. It doesn't have anything that we would associate with moral status in the world. Not anything that we use to distinguish. I mean, it has the living capacities of a tree at the very, very beginning. It's sort of beyond me that by mere virtue of the creature's biological heritage, that distinguishes it from everything else on Earth, which we wouldn't treat, which has a similar amount of capacities, a similar comprehension of the world, a similar capability to feel pain, that all of these lines that we use to determine acts that are wrong, you shouldn't torture things, you shouldn't limit their freedom, right? These are concepts that only make sense because of the capacities that beings have. So
I totally reject that philosophy, like in its entirety. Like the way you just summed up why we're responsible for things is, I mean, we're coming to the nub of it, right? Where we're coming to the source of our disagreement. I don't believe what you just said. And I don't think, as I said, I don't think what you're saying makes sense of the world, actually. I mean, for me, it is intuitive. Parentage is intuitive. Parentage begins... I mean, in most cases, we even recognize just morally that it even begins before conception, in the sense of, like, people think about, how do I plan for my child to enter the world into good circumstances? How do I begin thinking of that? How do I choose the right mate to have children with? Now, those are things that are normal for people that are in courtship, or that are engaged to be married, or, about to be lovers. The sexual act, we call it sexual reproduction because it reproduces a human being. Parentage begins then. Your responsibilities when you're pregnant are just very normal ones. To feed and to nourish, to care, to not do such strenuous work that you jeopardize the child's life. I mean, and then as the child grows, it becomes to educate, to shelter, etc. Sometimes we have society come in and help. As a child becomes a full adult, it's to share your wisdom. That's my moral view of the world. I don't have these qualifications that, like, if it doesn't have the capacity for pain temporarily as an unborn child, my obligations disappear. Because only get those capacities later. Because if it was capacity to speak or to express or to talk, then when a child goes into a coma suddenly, do your moral obligations to the child cease if your 10-year-old child goes into a coma? Of course not, because they're going to wake up from the coma. The same thing with pregnancy. The baby is coming. Like, the way to stop the baby from coming is an abortion, is to deliberately end its life by a conscious act. I mean, it's not like...
I don't think
it's not...
It has a life in any meaningful sense to begin with at that stage in life, right? At that stage in the biological development process, right? It just seems to me that you're describing a series of facts about the world that if a woman doesn't do anything, if she takes a very series of specific steps, then the child will result as a consequence of that, and ascribing moral responsibility or significance to the fact that if she makes a series of deliberate choices to nurture a fetus, that it will turn into a child, and all of a sudden that magically means the fetus develops the same moral status as a person, whereas an animal, which is way more developed in a variety of different senses, doesn't have the same degrees of moral protections. I mean, we can still kill them for food, whereas you would never countenance killing a fetus for food. I don't see why that's not just simply describing the world and then saying because it is this way, therefore several moral conclusions follow.